red box, but it's besides the point. The point is, when he saw that, he freaked out. He called the police, and they said the Secret Service involved, so then he called the Secret Service. And despite him having sold a bunch of red boxes to like co-workers, he was a Philadelphia public school teacher, and he sold them to all his co-workers, that sort of thing. Despite that level of culpability, the Secret Service, who had sort of motivation to punish me for things that had nothing to do with tone dialers, had to do with distributing surveillance photos of some other undercover agents. And this comes from my prosecutor, who told my lawyer that this is the real reason I was locked up. In any case, they gave them enough information to put a case together. It's one thing when a government agency for law enforcement agency they can figure out what's going on, but they have to prove it, and it's helpful when they have someone testify against you that's much stronger evidence, and they can say, well, obviously he was doing this and this because he had this. So,
Bernie, do you think that person was afraid of what they were doing? They were selling red boxes, you said, so they came forward so that they wouldn't get in trouble.
Yes.
And fingered you.
Absolutely.
And you were the bigger enemy because you were actually teaching people things and speaking out and being a lot more intelligent than just a common criminal.
Yeah, I wasn't hiding this. I was publicly showing people here how to rebuild red boxes at the First Hope Conference and at 2600 meetings and other stuff. So he, knowing that I was now locked up, was afraid that I was going to rat him out. It always was like you said, it's a divide and conquer thing. People are afraid who's going to rat who out first. So I was just taking responsibility for my own actions, and I was not about to name anybody else, even though I got a parcel letter later on and all this. I take responsibility for my own actions. But he decided he wanted to relieve himself from punishment. And I got an apology letter from him a year later saying, I hope you understand what I did, and I'm sorry, but, I've got a wife and kids and a job, and I hope you understand. And then he went on just like small talk after the letter. I'm like, what the hell is this letter? It's like, go away. I don't want nothing to do with you anymore. So these people, they seem to just justify why they do this. But as a result of him doing that, he got he got complete immunity, even though his actions he was more culpable in committing criminal offenses than I was, but he got nothing. So I don't begrudge him getting nothing, but I do have a problem with how he arrived at that result. Let's see. I just want to make one more point. No victims. The federal government and the state government in both my state misdemeanor and the federal felony cases. In both cases, they put in writing that there were no victims in my offenses. Yet, you can still, despite there's no victim in your case, you can still spend serious time in prison.
You became a victim for well over a year.
Well, I mean, not technically a victim, but I spent a good year and I went through a lot of trauma and so forth. But, it's kind of ironic, and you're standing before a judge and you have to apologize. And typically you're expected to apologize to the judge for the people that you harmed. And I was like really short on words. Like, what do you want me to say that the government said I didn't do anything, but judges don't want to hear that. You have to look humble and whatever that. So, and I don't want to say, well, I'm the victim, but whatever. Right. So this kind of stuff happens. But it's funny that amusing that our cases, Fibers and mine, were indirectly linked because someone who was culpable in a case that I was involved in ended up prior being an informant in Fibers' case.
Well, Fiber, I'd like for you to tell your story quickly, and it's because we have a lot of ground to cover. And Fiber Optic.
Thanks. With due respect to Condor, I bet you haven't been called Condor in a while, and Bernie S., for pointing out a lot of the legalese that we've been obliged to learn for our own protection, I want to take a few moments to rewind a little bit and speak on behalf of our rules that we lived by in our community long before the FBI and Secret Service succeeded in infiltrating our community. These things probably aren't spoken aloud very much anymore, and at the risk of sounding cliche, I won't refer to them as the hacker ethic, since that's become something of something in a movie script. What I will say is this: is that we've always spoken of the quest for knowledge as being most important in our pursuits. That this was always a noble cause. That the destruction of systems, crashing systems, was always something that we avoided doing at all costs, whether by accident or as a joke. It was something that was always frowned upon. The fact that information about technology should be freely available was something that we always held to be of great importance. We always frowned upon companies who charged who charged money for technical documentation and information about operating systems, which was very hard to find in the 1980s, for example, which is why trashing and things of that nature were so popular. A lot of the times was to find manuals on how to use the systems that we were getting access to. And then probably above all else, there was the notion of trust, which was extremely important when you consider the fact that at that time, there wasn't any internet to speak of. We were communicating via bulletin boards, in most cases, bulletin board systems with a single phone line with a single modem that we were sort of competing with each other to get through busy signals, just to get in, read some messages, and respond to some messages. That was basically how we communicated with each other back in the 1980s. The things that we were doing, while a lot of them originally were not illegal, they would become illegal through the modification of laws due to the complaints of big business to the government to crack down on hacking. Many of these laws were enacted around 1986, but they wouldn't really be tried officially until a few years later. But the trust that we always assumed was existent between our fellow man, obviously, as you can see from the stories of Kevin and Bernie, was not the case, and certainly would kind of fall apart over time as the government became more involved in hackers and in prosecuting hackers. Hackers are human beings as well, and we began to see our trust model basically fall apart. Since we were hacking the reason why we had these handles in the first place was not because we were playing cloak and dagger games. It was because we were doing things that were illegal and we needed to protect our personal identity. And this was mutually respected between hackers. For a hacker to even to divulge the identity of another hacker to other hackers was frowned upon. So certainly to give information about what a hacker was doing to the feds, to volunteer this information was unheard of. The fact that it's so easily done today for personal gain or to avoid prosecution is really a self-serving behavior that simply didn't exist back then. And it's unfortunate that things have changed to this degree. There have been many people who have come about over the years who were wholly self-serving. Kevin's example of Justin Peterson is a prime example, and unfortunately he's not here to defend himself because he's dead. Justin Peterson actually died a couple of months ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, recently.
Yeah. I'm not dancing on his grave or anything, but other people might. Justin actually I knew Justin from BBS's in the late 1980s, and he used to call me up quite frequently, and we used to discuss hacking switches. The only reason I can imagine, and I knew he was on the run supposedly, and doing things of a questionable nature, I didn't know that he was informing on people, least of all Kevin or Kevin Poulsen. When I met the California hackers in the early 90s, and we sat down and discussed exactly what it is Justin did, it became apparent to me what had happened. But much of what Justin knew and did with switches in and around California, and I guess elsewhere when he was on the run, I hesitate to say he learned from me. The only reason I can imagine he didn't inform on me personally is because I was such a good source of information to him, which is unfortunate because had I known what he was doing, certainly I would have hesitated to talk to him. But again, I knew him from bulletin board systems and had no reason to doubt